Greetings and welcome to the Quest for Wisdom podcast, where we search for nuggets of wisdom from the lives of some truly amazing people. Today's guest is Daniel Clegg. Daniel is a martial arts practitioner with black belts in both Judo and Tae Kwondo, and now he is working up the belts in Jiu Jitsu as well. Daniel left his life in the UK with a yearning to escape mundanity and search for new opportunities. On a very limited budget, he cycled to Greece for the Olympics and became used to sleeping outdoors. He then spent 4 years living on the streets in Paris, where he pursued artistic dreams and hustled for survival. He has recently started an Instagram page at tkd.flow, where he teaches and showcases Taekwondo skills. Today we talk about discipline, camaraderie, delayed gratification, and much more. Daniel is a straight-talking and highly disciplined human being. I hope you enjoy our conversation. For more details about Daniel, check the description of the podcast. Welcome, Daniel, to the 4th episode of the Quest for Wisdom podcast. How does that make you feel?
Quest for wisdom makes me feel, how did I end up here?
How did I end up here talking to this weird man in a big green room in the middle of Barcelona?
How did this weird man end up here talking to another weird man? It seems very fitting when you put it like that.
Exactly. Wait a minute, let me put my phone on silent because don't want to get disturbed. So, Daniel, you are the 4th guest on the podcast. I think that they're getting better every time. So this will be the best podcast in the series so far.
Until the next one.
Until the next one. So you are a human.
Last time I checked, yes.
You are a human. You're also a man. You are a black belt in judo.
Yes.
You are a photographer.
Yes.
You are an artist.
I'm hesitant to use that term. Maybe we'll get into that, but I'm hesitant to use that term. I'm a lot more comfortable and confident to say that
you create
I
art.
paint. I paint.
You paint. Okay, so you paint, may or may not be an artist, but you do.
That's for other people to decide.
But you do indeed paint.
Yeah.
And the reason why I've got you here on this podcast, we met because you were doing photography at an event I was performing at.
Yes.
And I performed a poem about basically someone who got hooked on drugs and became homeless in Barcelona and ultimately died. That poem's called The Ballad of Barcelona. The Ballad of John Doe. And you then came to speak to me about that because you thought that maybe I'd experienced being homeless. And then we got onto the topic of you being homeless, living in Paris, painting, maybe being an artist, maybe not. But ultimately living rough to escape a life in the UK that you weren't comfortable with and escape drugs and all these other things. So could you start by telling us a little bit about the beginning of your story, how you ended up at that stage, living the artist lifestyle, George Orwell, Ernest Hemingway, don't know any painters that have done that, but hit me.
No, yeah, you're right. It's escaping. It was about escaping a life I wasn't interested in and trying to build, find, discover, have bestowed upon me a life that I did want. I grew up in a small town in England where there's not many opportunities. And in my late teens, I needed to leave. I first went to university. That didn't work out for me.
What did you pick to study?
It was photography and film studies. In my first year, photography and film studies, and then the second year, I changed to politics and philosophy. But there were a lot of reasons I needed to leave that place. And the place I ultimately decided to spend my early 20s was in Paris. And living rough in Paris was preferable to going back to uni, or it was preferable to going back home to that town. It was the least bad option, I guess.
But that may not seem to some people listening, that may not seem like the least bad option to go and live rough for. It was a few years, wasn't it?
It
Um,
was like 4 years on and off.
4 years. So, ha in what way was it the worst option? The best option,
It was
sorry.
the least bad option. Well, I mean, Paris is a special place. Paris is a yeah special experience, and it's a magical place. Yeah, I'm not gonna say it was a bad experience. It was I had a lot of unique experience and profound experiences. So I feel very lucky for them. But yeah, sleeping outside was not a choice. Living outside, living in that very transient lifestyle was not a choice. It was a consequence of the situation I found myself in. So that's something I would have changed. I wouldn't have chosen that, but I felt I had few options other than that to be where I found myself. But yeah, I wanted to be in that place. I wanted to be having those experiences in that place. So living outside was a consequence of that, and that the entirety of the situation was better than going back to uni or going back home.
But what was so bad about uni or home that made you feel like you had to leave? Because you talk about it almost like it's escaping, like
Yeah,
it's something that you had to almost run from fairly abruptly.
yeah. Okay, so the town I grew up in is a UK English coastal town.
Are you going to name and shame it?
It's Great Yarmouth.
Great Yarmouth.
Yeah. Actually, it's just outside of Great Yarmouth, but Great Yarmouth's probably more in people's minds than the town itself. But it's close enough. Yeah, and Great Yarmouth, like many English coastal towns, it's deprived. It has the 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 predominant economy is tourism, or it was at the time. So for uh, 2 months in the summer, it's a really interesting, fun, exciting place to live, and then for 10 months of the year, it's a bit of a hell.
Mm.
Um, and there's a lot of unemployment. There's a lot of problems with drugs. Um, if you're not working in tourism, you're quite possibly unemployed. A lot of unemployed people. There's few career prospects. It felt like that for me, that there were few career prospects. There's there's an offshore industry.
Mm.
Um, there's some shipping and working on oil rigs, but that's really tough work. And it's not I'm not opposed to hard work. It's just not the work I wanted to do. And but that creates a real tough mentality as well in people. So it's a tough, cold town physically, but that permeates into the mentality of the people. So there's a lot of hostility there as well.
So it's like a your standard kind of working class. Is it working class town?
Yeah, there's there. I think the term is underclass.
Underclass. Okay.
Yeah, there's a lot of working class, which I have a lot of respect for, but there's a lot of underclass as well, and yeah, there's a lot of criminal activity and a lot of drug abuse and a lot of unemployment, which yeah, I didn't want to be around that.
Mm.
Yeah, I wanted to try and create a better life for myself, and I didn't feel like that was the place to do it. Um, so yeah, my first stop, following the advice of tutors in school and college, was to go to university. But the city I chose to go to university just felt like a bigger version of Great Yarmouth.
And what city was that?
That was Wolverhampton.
Ah, okay.
Um, it was just a bigger version of Great Yarmouth. I was encountering a lot of the same problems.
Yeah, I think those because I was in Birmingham for uni, and those Midland cities, I can imagine how 20, 30 years ago would have been the shit. When there's a load of industry going on, when that industry's gone, You know, all your places, Leicester, Stoke, Wolverhampton,
Yeah,
they're it is, you sense it, you feel the depravity,
yeah,
and you feel it is resentment. There's
yeah,
resentment, there's hostility, there's depravity,
yeah,
and it's sad because there's just nothing,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
nothing for people to do, and all
It's
these people that have worked really hard, doing really demanding jobs,
yeah.
and then they just get shut down, and then they're just stuck
They've
with
lost their
nothing,
purpose,
lost their purpose exactly,
and
their
so
ikigai.
need to create a new identity for themselves, and in that moment they're vulnerable, and
Mm.
people can be exploited in their vulnerability, and yeah, they've lost their identity. They had a purpose. They knew who they were. They knew what their role was within the system of an industry, and yeah, they lost that, and yeah, it creates a lot of problems: frustration, anger, resentment, hostility, um, and a sense of escapism as well. People are trying to escape from this absence that they can feel in their lives now. So it's very easy to turn to drink and drugs and other forms of escapism. They want to make their lives better, so it's very easy to gamble and to hope, to wish, to gamble your opportunities away. It's
Did you feel, did you feel within yourself, did you feel the resentment growing up? Did you feel the hostility? Did you feel um, envious of people that had better opportunities, or wealthier people? The reason I ask that is because it it seems to me that, you know, between the classes there is resentment. You know, that working class doesn't like the richer people, upper class, and then upper class doesn't understand the working class, and there's all this total mismatch of feelings towards different people, effectively.
do I feel that in myself?
Did you, or I suppose, do you?
Ay, ay, ay. Yeah, maybe more so at the time. Maybe then at that time I did. I could probably say that I did. Um, I wasn't satisfied with my role, with what my place was, and I wanted to break away from that. I wasn't willing to accept the role that I felt I was being put into
So,
within. I didn't want to be that cog in that machine.
so you felt that the opportunities that directly faced you were very limited,
Yes,
and you refused to accept that.
correct.
Well, that's very admirable. So you mentioned to me before that then during that time you ended up getting mixed up with drugs. Was that in the teenage years?
Yes,
And how did that happen in the first place, and how deep did that go?
that was everywhere in the time. I think it was hard to avoid it unless you had a really good structure, um, unless you had a really good parental support network. It was hard to escape it. It was everywhere. People were looking to escape.
Mm.
Excuse me. Yeah, people were looking to escape, and that was a very easy place to escape into.
Mm. And so which drugs were you using?
I was smoking a lot of weed.
Yeah,
More than anything, it was that, and
yeah.
alcohol too. They were very accessible. They Yeah, they gave you the escapism that you needed. But ultimately they create more problems than they solve, and you need to deal with your problems in a different way.
Yeah, that's the thing, that is when you're trying to escape, and then the moment that you start using these um, chemical escape methods, the chances of you getting hooked on that are so high, and the chances of you actually solving any of your problems are so low, and they just get further and further and further apart. And
Yeah, you can solve your problems for one night, but you wake up in the morning with more problems than you started with.
yeah, a good friend of mine, he was a heroin addict for about 10 years, and he this came at like the end of my drug taking career, so it was advice too late, but it's always stuck in my head ever since. He said, whatever you take from drugs, you pay back with interest.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like that. I thought that was just, it's stuck. It's the same. You can apply that. Alcohol for confidence, you'll feel worse the next day.
For sure.
Caffeine for energy, you'll feel worse the next day. Weed to escape or to be creative, you'll be worse the next day. It's like all of those, and they just compound on each other, and you just go down and down and down and down and down.
And
It's
if you don't have
crazy.
other things in your life, they're so easy to abuse.
Yeah.
And there will be people there who want to exploit your your vulnerabilities.
Mm.
The well, the dealers or the people. There's pubs on every corner. There's liquor stores on every corner. There's dealers on every street.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. People want to escape, and then there's an entire economy built around the the idea of selling you something other than the life that you have, other than confronting the life that you're actually living and dealing with that and solving those problems.
I think that I think that the UK is for escapism is crazy, and for just general drug use, alcohol use, everything. I've traveled around a bit, been to various different places, and there's nowhere. Maybe Ireland, UK, and well, when I say UK, I include wrongly include Ireland in that, but the UK and Ireland, um, there's just nowhere I've been that compares to it, and I think part of it is the weather,
Yeah, yeah.
because for most of the year you can't go outside and just hang around,
No,
just wander around, or like go and work out in the park, or just do any of those things, meet some friends and wander around the park, just all those things. Like you can, but you also can't at the same time. Like,
it's dark, it's wet, it's cold, it's not inviting.
yeah, and I
You
think,
get sick, uh, you put yourself at risk. Um, or if you want to use, I don't know, floodlit facilities, it becomes expensive. And if you don't have the resources to access those spaces, then what choices do you have?
yeah, it's it's sad. I think because it does. I think it does in the way that you've mentioned that. Um, the mentality of people is shaped with their circumstances around work and everything. It's also the same with like cold weather. Cold weather creates kind
So,
of cold, hardened
absolutely.
people, and I always think that it stems back to in the olden days. If you didn't have if you're in somewhere, Scotland, Northern England, in the winter and you don't have shelter, you're gonna die.
Yeah.
Like that's it, you're gonna die because you can't survive outside. If you're anywhere further south, like northern France or most of Europe, um, you're not gonna die. You probably won't. Well, you probably won't die of cold at least, and it creates this weird, hard like mentality of tough, like not expressing your emotions because you have to kind of stay
Yeah,
hard.
you gotta keep your head down. There's no time to really think about your situation because you have to deal with it. Um, yeah, I can't think too much about uh, my feelings or what my responses are to the situation because if I spend too long thinking, then I'm not active. If I'm not active, then I'm not gathering the food or repairing the house or gathering the firewood.
Mm,
It's yeah, our mentalities are a consequence of our environment.
yeah, and I think it was coming to Spain that really showed me the difference. People are just so laid back here, sometimes annoyingly so.
Yeah,
When it comes to actually getting stuff done, there has to be a nice balance between that. But it's like people are just in no hurry. They don't really care much about things, and it's just they're happy to just chill around and drink a beer in the sun.
well,
Like,
that's the environment permits that.
yeah,
You can sit outside all day on the bench and yeah, you're not going to die because it doesn't get that cold
yeah,
very rarely. And you can sit under the orange tree and just wait for them to fall down and you're fed. You don't need to do anything.
yeah.
The food is just falling off the tree.
Yeah, and you mentioned that you you were like going home wasn't an option for you during university time, so your leaving was a better option than going home. Can you explain a bit about that, about the home life?
Um, I'd have got sucked back into all the things that I was trying to escape from if I'd have gone back home.
Mm.
Um, my the friends I had at the time had had been sucked into that world. They were going deeper into drugs, and they were struggling to find meaningful work and have meaningful projects in their life. And I'd have got sucked back into that. Um, they were. I don't want to be mean to them, but they were kind of friends of geographical convenience.
Yeah.
Again, you're a product of your environment. If you don't know any better, then you have to deal with what is presented to you in your environment. Um, and those friends at that time in that place were getting deeper and more committed to a world that I didn't see myself as being a part of. So there was that. Again, there's no jobs. There's no
Mm.
meaningful jobs in that town. Nothing that interested me at the time. Um, and yeah, my home life was unstable, so that would have been problematic as well. I mean, I had a room to go to, which is why I'm sometimes hesitant to use the term homeless, because I had a room, I had a place where I was welcome. Welcome. I had a place where I could go, but I didn't. Yeah, I didn't feel welcome there. I knew that it would come with problems, and the problems at home in the house where my parents lived were bigger or would have been bigger than the problems I was facing out on the streets by myself.
But what problems were those?
Yeah, I wouldn't have called it this at the time, but in later years, I've realized that maybe the correct term is abuse. It's like verbally abusive, physically abusive, emotionally abusive. Um, I think you can abuse people by withholding resources from them. It's another form of mental abuse. It's like you give something, you make them feel comfortable, and then without explanation, you take it all away again. And it leaves the person. It left me feeling very confused. Like, what have I done? Well, why is this happening? It's a form of abuse and manipulation,
Mm.
and it never seemed to have any reason behind it. It always seemed unjustified, and yeah, it's just not something I wanted to deal with. It was having major consequences on my mental health.
Were they drinkers? Were are
Um, I- there have been bouts throughout the history of my life where I can recall my parents resorting to alcohol. They're not alcoholics.
okay.
No, they don't have a long-term abuse problem, but there have been periods that I can recall when both of them independently, I would say now, relied a little too heavily on alcohol to solve whatever problems they were experiencing in their life at that time.
Yeah.
But they're not alcoholics. They definitely don't have drug problems. Um, and the incidents or the times that I'm referring to are minimal, but that has happened. I think it's maybe everybody or a lot of people resort at some point to some form of escapism. So
Yeah.
maybe I'm trying to cut them some slack and say that it's kind of normal. But then also having gone through my journey, I would say that you have to find a different way.
100%. Um, and so, at what stage did judo enter the equation?
um, I actually did judo as a kid. Um, maybe I started judo maybe 7 years old.
Oh,
Did it for about 4, maybe 5 years. Got to I think green belt, which is kind of halfway through. And yeah, typical 12-year-old, that's when you're starting to maybe become more self-aware, and you don't want to maybe you the toys, the interests you had as a child maybe don't
Mm.
interest you some more, and it was around 12, 13 that I started getting into some of the things we've already talked about, and the things that had previously interested me started slipping off my radar. So, about judo, yeah, I did judo for about 4 or 5 years, from maybe 7, 8 until 11, 12, something like that. And yeah, I didn't go back to it for, I think, until 2016.
Oh,
So it was like a massive gap.
yeah. So how
Almost,
old are you now?
I just turned 40.
Oh, okay. Looking very good for your age. Judo's obviously worked well. And
It's
Paris.
yeah, well, it's you've got to take control of your life, and you make healthy choices. And I try and make healthy choices.
Yeah.
Drinking water. But what you didn't mention there. Um, I actually got, yeah, okay, I did judo as a kid. Um, as a how old? Okay, hold on. Let me put these things in order. Okay, when I stopped living in Paris, when I just finally decided to move back to England and go back to university, um, I think it was 2009. By which point I was like 26, 27. And one of the clubs, societies at the university was a Taekwondo club.
Oh,
So at 26, 27, I actually started Taekwondo.
okay.
And I got I got quite deep into Taekwondo. Found it it's something I needed. Like, that was a healthy thing for me to do. Was
Kicking is very therapeutic.
I think it's just a physical activity,
Mm.
You need to use your body. You use your body, you put stress on your body, it releases dopamine and serotonin, makes you feel good. And you feel healthy. So you want to escape. Excuse me. You want to escape. Well, you go to this place that's a different environment. Um, you go to the gym, you go to the dojo, you go to a different space where you can change your mentality and kind of tap into a different part of your psyche and who you are, and engage with, yeah, a different environment with different lights and different colored walls, and it's something different,
Mm.
maybe than the place that you're trying to escape from, or this thing that is another part of your life. It offers variety and color and texture to your life by having lots of things that fill your time. Taekwondo was one of those things that filled my time. I got very deep into it. I recognized that it was healthy for me physically, mentally. I recognized that, yeah, there's things in my life that make me angry,
Mm.
but I can't take that anger out on those things. It wouldn't be right to do so. I'm not allowed to do so, and nor should I be. But I think it's right, it's natural, it's normal, it's healthy to feel anger
Mm.
at certain things. But you have to be very careful and very responsible with that feeling and the power that that emotion has. You need to channel that into a healthy, constructive place. If you don't have control over that, it'll get you arrested.
Yeah.
It'll get you put in prison. It'll get you in street fights. It'll have you hurting yourself. Um, so anger is normal. In my opinion, anger is normal, and anger is healthy if you can channel that energy correctly.
And on the spectrum of anger, would you say that you fall more towards naturally quite like an angry person, or naturally a more relaxed person?
I would say I'm relaxed, but there's a lot of things that make me angry.
Mm.
And I think it's right. Like, if you see somebody dropping litter in the street, then, and if that doesn't anger you, then I would question, why do you not feel angry about that? That's something that doesn't need to happen, that shouldn't happen, that is very easily avoidable. And if you're not having a response to that, to the action of that other person, then really, I think you need to question your own ethics and morality. And
But
that's just a small example of dropping litter.
yeah, yeah.
There's hundreds of things that should make us angry.
But then I suppose,
Climate change, war.
but
Ugh.
then I suppose though it's like you mentioned, it's how you channel that anger. Do you experience momentary anger, and then that anger dissipates as you process and understand the situation, or does that anger at someone dropping litter last all week? I suppose that's when the difference is,
I think that depends on the severity of the problem that you're witnessing.
or the control of the anger that you've got.
Yeah, this too.
I know that, like, for example, in my case, there are things that most people would consider stupid or pathetic that would be playing on my mind for years.
Right?
And like sometimes wake up in the morning, I'll be angry at someone about a conversation that we've had 5 years ago. And it's like, that's my version of anger, but I don't experience anger to the level where I would be violent ever. Whereas I played rugby for many years. I've just started again, but and also doing martial arts and seeing there are some people who will switch, and you can see people switch, and rage fills them,
Yeah, that's
and it's really scary to witness. But it always made me curious as to what that feeling is like, because you literally see their eyes change,
uh-huh.
and they are not
That
themselves.
happens to me.
That happens to you.
Yeah, but you have to learn how to control that.
Yeah, because that's something that it's always fascinated me in just a human expression of emotion. That has fascinated me. I've seen it happen many times, but I've never experienced that. And there are certain people who you can tell have got rage inside of them, and a lot of those people tend to turn to martial arts because that's how you learn to control that
You
rage,
channel it.
and you channel it.
You put it into a box and you save it for an appropriate time.
Yeah, for
And you
moments when you're allowed to do that, and your
or
opponent
you
agrees
take it
it.
out on an inanimate object. That's what kicking bags are for.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I really don't want to do that to people, even though maybe you could argue that some of them deserve it. I don't want to do that to somebody. It's not nice. It's not the vision that you want to create for the world. If you okay, well, the person dropping litter, that's a problem. That the world doesn't need to be like that. We can control this problem. But rage, anger is not the way to do it. We need to reason with this person.
yeah.
We need to solve this problem in a different way. It's right that you're passionate about it. It's right that you get angry about it
Mm.
because that means you feel something. That means you care. And if that means you care about important things, but you want to live in a beautiful world, well, we start by not throwing litter on the floor and setting a good example for other people. But if somebody's doing that, if they've momentarily forgotten, if they were never taught, you need to give them the benefit of the doubt and reason with them. And that's only one example. Again, there are many. Many are more important than this dropping litter
But I
example.
suppose it sets a good benchmark because it's the it's the most simplistic and easily understandable
And you see it every
example,
day.
and you see it every day. But like you're mentioning about, it's there has to be some empathy involved. Like, for example, I spent some time in Brazil, and I went into the Amazon and went to like an indigenous community and stuff, and absolutely filled with litter. Like, you would not believe, the Amazon River filled. And then from our brains, we're like, oh my God, what's wrong with these people? Like, why are they throwing litter? But then they grew up and have it ingrained within them from using organic everything, like a bowl is a coconut shell or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they just throw it on the side because it's organic. So it doesn't matter. Then along comes the West, and along comes plastic
Uh huh.
and non decomposable items. They still have to eat it, chuck it in the river or whatever, and they haven't unlearned that, and they don't have the infrastructure to clean this stuff up yet. It's like, if we didn't have if we didn't have Barcelona is actually very clean. They do an amazing job of keeping it clean. But if we didn't have bin lorries coming around doing it, the percentage of people that do throw litter would end up it would be ridiculous. There would be litter everywhere. I
Sure.
think it was in the 60s or potentially the 70s, maybe between 50s and 70s in New York. The binmen went on strike,
Uh-huh.
and within a very short space of time, the city was absolutely overflowing
Of
with
course.
litter. And it's just like, whoa, it makes you realize that, wait a minute, like, we actually rely ridiculously
Of
on this
course.
infrastructure.
Of course.
It's absolutely crazy. But that's a little digression there. So yeah, so you got into the taekwondo, and the taekwondo um, was helping you, I suppose. It
Yeah,
was,
absolutely. The community of people. Um, I started training in a gym, in a sports hall, but the community of people was great. And I think it was about 3 or 4 years after training with that club in the sports hall that I moved to a different city after finishing the university. Moved to a different city to then do a master's degree, and in that city where I was living at the time, I found another taekwondo club that was practicing the same style, and they trained in a church,
ah,
um, which was a beautiful place. It was a it was big, it was spacious, it was beautifully lit, um, beautiful spiritual place to train, and there's a lot of spirituality in martial arts.
mm,
Um, so again, it's about being in a different environment, being in a place that you don't normally go, having a good support network of people around you to help. Um, so yeah, training in that church was a real privilege. Training with those people was a real privilege. Um, and I think I did after starting, I did taekwondo for about 10 years. Eventually, the second club I was training with awarded me the black belt there and made me an instructor. And it was around that time I was like, hey, I wonder if okay, I got my striking down. I feel pretty confident about my striking. Um, Taekwondo is striking for anyone who doesn't know.
it's punching and kicking
Our
mainly, isn't
style
it?
was predominantly kicking. There were some hand strikes, but very few in comparison to the kicking. It's
Okay.
predominantly kicking.
And how does a taekwondo match get scored? Like, are you going for knockout? Are you going for
Uh,
points?
I think it's 1 point for a shot to the body, 3 points for a shot to the head,
Okay.
and then when the timer runs out, whoever's got the most points is winner.
Okay. Are there knockouts in it though? Like, do people get? Because you wear the head guards in it when you're fighting, don't you?
Yeah, knockouts as a like Olympic sport, knockouts are really frowned upon. You can actually get penalized for using excessive force.
Ah.
Like so, if you in as a sport, if you punch someone too hard, they'll deduct points from you. It's excessive force. It's a sport. Like you just need to. It's not about as a sport. The idea is not to injure your opponent. Like okay, if I can strike
Ah.
you, then I've made my point. I'm not trying to knock you out. If you carry it
Ah.
into if you carry it into MMA, then yeah, sure, I'm trying to knock you out because that's what that game is. That's what that sport is. If it's a street fight, then yeah, probably the same.
Ah. So as the sport, it's more, if anything, I suppose, more control to
Yeah,
try
you
and kind of
try
like tap you and
make
show that I
yeah
can.
demonstrate your ability, demonstrate your technique, demonstrate your mastery of the technique. It's not about
Ah.
force. It's about your technique, your skill, your speed, your flexibility, your ability to fake out your opponent by making them think that you're sending your kick one way and then actually flipping it and sending it another way.
Oh.
It's very technical.
Because I did a little bit of capoeira, which is like the Brazilian, it's like a fight dance. You
Uh-huh.
familiar?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So for people, anyone that doesn't know, it was created by the slaves in Brazil who were not allowed to fight because they were slaves. They basically created this martial art which has some music involved and it looks a bit like a dance, so that they could practice some form of combat without making it look like they were doing combat. And the idea
Yes.
is that you're against an opponent and you're trying to hit them, and if you do hit them, you win. So that you're trying to hit them, they're trying to avoid you, and it's this game of backwards and forwards, and it was so amazing just to it's like the coordination and because sometimes you'll work with people and you'll be basically just dancing with them and trying to double second guess each other, but sometimes you'll actually be fighting and trying to tap them, and it's just
Yeah.
that it's that level of control. It's that if I
Yeah.
could, I could batter you here. If
Exactly.
but I'm tapping you,
That's not the
and
game
that's
we're
it
playing.
exactly. And it's
Like, you're
like,
my friend,
yeah,
right? The majority of the time you're sparring with people from your gym, from your dojo, they're your friends, you know. Um, I'm not trying to knock you out because you won't come back next week.
yeah,
And then how many weeks can you do that for? Because eventually there's going to be nobody there.
yeah,
Like, okay, sure, if somebody wants to go hard, then sure, we'll go hard, okay. But there's rules to it. There's structure to it. There's a format to it. Like, you play by the rules of the game, and sure, if you want to change the rules a little bit, then that's to be agreed with the person that you're playing with.
mm,
But no, principally it's a technical sport. It's a technical discipline.
yeah. And you mentioned about the community and working with just having that support network there.
Yeah.
It's like, what was that doing for you mentally to have that structure there?
Um, it was reassuring to me. There's like, oh, there's people who are into the same things that I'm into. They understand these feelings that I have.
Mm,
That's why they came to this place. That's why they found their way here. Something brought them here, or if if something didn't bring them there, if it was their parents,
mm,
rather than a feeling that they had, if something else brought them there, something within them made them stay. They're all adults. They're all self-aware. They're all responsible. Like, nobody's forcing you to be here. Why do you choose to keep coming? There's something inside you that is shared between us.
yeah,
There's some feeling, some awareness, some thing that keeps us both coming here. We have something in common,
yeah,
and it's not these that they were not friends of geographical convenience.
hmm,
They were friends on a more profound level. They were friends who, yeah, some of them were angry, but they knew that this was the place for their anger. Some of them really enjoyed the physicality of it. The Some of them really enjoyed the diet and nutrition. Some of them really enjoyed the space, the church I was telling you about. We had things in common,
yeah. I
in valuable things.
deep things,
Yeah,
and I
healthy things.
yeah, I think that it that sense of community and that sense of connection to people who are experiencing similar things to you is just invaluable. Like that's part of the reason for doing this podcast, getting all different people on who've had these different experiences, because each person talks to a different branch of people,
Uh-huh.
and it's like, wait a minute, I'm having those experiences, I'm feeling these things.
Right,
Maybe that's the right avenue for me. And it's
right.
like when you finally, I've been here for 7, 8 years now, and I've always felt like the black sheep everywhere. I always felt lost.
Uh-huh.
I always felt like
Yeah,
I had friends, I had acquaintances, but I didn't feel like I fitted in anywhere.
yeah,
And then, about a year ago, whatever, and I started discovering this creative scene here.
yeah.
And then straight away, without even really talking to people, I'm just around all these other weirdos who have got
It's weirdos.
it's
Yes.
weirdos. It's like around all these other creative weirdos who've got their head in the clouds, talking about weird poetry and saying stupid things. I'm like,
Right,
just feel so comfortable talking to these people because they are ultimately similar to you.
right.
And then once you feel that, it's like you feel so much less alone.
Yes.
And that sense of community was something I was just like longing for and longing for so long. Just a forum or a space where you can just be yourself
Yeah.
and just
No judgment.
do whatever you need to do, and everyone else will just be supportive
Yeah.
and nothing but supportive. And it's like it's it's so valuable. And I don't know anyone that's not got some sense of community, because friends are
Yeah.
one thing, and friends pop up from different places. Some are geographical, some are through
Yeah.
circumstance, some are through relationships,
Yeah.
whatever. But friends are a different kettle of fish, I think, to community and tribe,
Yeah,
because friends are there regardless, and you might not even have much in common with your friends, but they're there. But these community that you meet, that they're you just connect. You do,
yeah.
just do, without
It's
having to say much. You
it's
do
an unspoken
exactly,
communication.
exactly. It's unspoken. Everybody gets each other without having to really say or do anything,
Yeah,
and it's not much. There's not necessarily much dialogue ever exchanged when you
doesn't
go to the dojo or when you're training or doing a sport. You
right,
don't need to. It's just you've all got each other's backs. You're all there,
right,
and you're punching and kicking each other. Or
right.
like in my case, it was always rugby, and like you're there smashing people
Yeah,
and then hugging them afterwards, and
right.
it's like it's
This is
amazing.
something about me. The feelings that I have inside, the understanding I have of myself needs to be expressed and exercised through this activity. And you're here to do the same thing. We got something in common. You don't
Yeah,
need to speak about it too much. It's a shared communication.
yeah, it's amazing. And so then you got black belt in taekwondo,
Yeah,
and then you moved on to judo.
yeah. I was the more.
Oh, so sorry, no, sorry. So you
No,
did the
that's
judo when you
correct.
started,
Yeah.
and then you got the taekwondo in the middle, and then you came back to the judo.
Okay. Yeah. Again, let me. I did judo as a kid. As in my mid 20s, I started taekwondo. When I got the black belt in taekwondo, when I felt confident with my striking, I I remembered that. Oh yeah, I did judo for like 4 years. I wonder if I'm still any good at that. Like, I'd really like to learn that again because it's a completely different style.
And
It's
so,
it's grappling.
yeah. So explain to people judo, the fundamentals of judo. What's the objective? How does it work?
Um, okay, real quick, judo. You start standing on your feet, and the objective is to throw the other person on the floor so they land on their shoulders. As in the sport of judo, you win. As a martial art, the idea that if you can throw the other person onto their shoulders and they're on the floor, at that point you would, as a historic like samurai,
Stamina.
you would then draw your knife, and they'd have one less player in their team. Um, yeah, but as a sport, the objective is to throw the other person on their shoulders. Doesn't always work out that way, so the game can continue on the ground where you can win through holding them down.
Mm,
Again, the lineage from the martial arts being that you could, at that point you can draw your knife, or you can disable them through strangulations, chokes, um, breaking their arm, things like that. So there is a submission element to judo, but principally the pure way of judo is to make the opponent land by throwing them onto their shoulders.
okay.
It's a grappling. It's whereas I've described taekwondo as being very technical, judo is power, strength. It's technical as well, of course, but power is a lot more important, and you will need strength and power to throw your opponent to the ground.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt confident with my striking, and I wanted to explore or re-explore my grappling.
Okay. And so you started that. You said 2016.
Yeah, let me think. When did I go back to that? I finished my masters, and when I finished my masters, I'm like, yeah, okay, I need some more projects.
Mm,
Let's try judo. Let's see what's in the box. And I thought I'd have to start again. I was quite prepared to start as a white belt, and I did. I was totally white belt. But the head coach at the club where I went to train judo was quite high up in the British Judo Association, and he was able to fast track me through the lower grades to get me back to where I was when I quit as a kid.
right.
So he yeah, basically he signed me off, and after 6 months put me back to green belt.
Okay.
He had the power within the association to do that, and he could see that my ability, the things I'd learned previously, okay, I need to polish them up a little bit. I need to remember the names and
Hmm.
perfect the technique, but 6 months will get you back to where you were. And then I think about 3 years again, starting at the green belt effectively, 3 years of training and competing. I got the black belt in judo as well
Nice.
because yeah, you can earn your black belt in judo through competing. Once you get to your brown belt, all the lower grades are typically quite technical. You have to do exams and you have to know the names of your moves and throws and demonstrate them very technically. But once you get your brown belt, well, this is how it worked for me. Once I got my brown belt, you can start competing against other brown belts. If you win, you get 10 points. You get 100 points. Congratulations, here's your black belt. You earned it through competition.
So if you beat 10 brown belts, then you get your black belt. Oh, are you making up the number 10?
No.
All
That's
right,
yeah.
right.
That's how it works. Yeah. You if one brown belt beats another brown belt, they get 10 points. You collect 100 points. Congratulations, here's your black belt. There's a
Oh,
technical pathway as well,
yeah,
where
yeah,
you
yeah.
but it's also a competitive pathway. So some
Nice.
people some people are not so good at competing,
Yeah.
but they know the names for everything. They know how to do the technique perfectly. They can show variations of it, combinations and sequences. Um, but they don't want to or they're not very good at competing. So they follow the technical pathway. But I followed the competitive pathway and earned it that way. So at that point, I feel very confident with my striking. Felt confident with my grappling. Felt like I had things pretty covered.
And I think there's some people like this was my case. I always wanted to do martial arts when I was a kid. But I was oversized to say the least. Like I was way larger than everyone else up until I was about 13, 14, and everyone caught up. And my mum always just thought that if I did martial arts, I would just be beating people up. But then I think that maybe is kind of um, one of the misconceptions about it, that teach someone to fight and then they'll start smashing people's heads in. Um, would you say that it helped you to avoid actual confrontation in real life, or having that ability to, or what impact do you think it had?
Yeah, definitely. It definitely helps me to avoid confrontation in real life, uh, like physical confrontation, certainly. Um, if you're skilled in a fighting discipline or in a discipline that can be used for fighting as opposed to a sport, you know the power that you have, and you should be aware of the responsibility of that.
Mm,
You can't go starting fights with every person who drops litter. One, there's just not enough time in your day to do that.
Dan the vigilante.
But but two, you're gonna end up hurting some people, and there's gonna be some consequences for that.
Mm,
You're gonna get in trouble with the police. And also, I've learned that I remember one competition that I was in judo, and I looked across the mat from me, and I'm like, man, I was arrogant in this moment. I'm like, man, I'm so easily gonna win this. It was the skinny little kid standing across from me, and he was, but he got me with a choke, and I'd never been choked out before. I never had to tap out before
mm.
in judo like that. I'm like, wow, that really. I think I was humbled in that moment. Well, that definitely taught me to not judge people before you kind of stand toe to toe with them. Because I
Yeah,
thought I was going to win that. I was very confident about winning against that kid, and he choked me out. So again, if you're going to apply that to somebody out in the street, like, okay, this somebody looks unassuming. You don't know what they know,
yeah,
and also you don't know that they might be carrying a knife or anything.
exactly.
You don't know if they got three friends waiting around the corner. You can't be starting fights with people. There's going to
No.
be consequences. You're going to get yourself into trouble, or you're going to get hurt. So I would try and avoid confrontation, physical confrontation on the street.
Mm.
Absolutely the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, I think that the power of even someone that's done 1 year of, something like judo, jiu-jitsu, even something Muay Thai, even 1 year of training, that person is then just way above anyone that hasn't done
Sure,
anything.
sure,
Even someone that's bigger than them, by 10, 15 kilos,
sure.
they can batter them. And
Yeah.
people underestimate this, I think. And it's like, in Brazil, I got tapped out in jiu-jitsu by a girl. I think she was about 17. She was
Uh-huh.
a brown belt. I remember she had her back
Wow.
on the floor and then just like her legs around my neck, just like,
Yeah.
I was just like stood up, like trying to resist, just like, because obviously no one wants to, like, no man wants to get tapped out by like a woman, let alone an 18-year-old girl that's about 55 kilos or
Yeah.
something, half my body weight, and then tapping me out. And I was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like these people.
Don't make any judgments about anybody.
Yeah. But I think as well that one thing I thought was amazing, that obviously jiu-jitsu, well, Brazilian jiu-jitsu is from Brazil, but a lot of the people I'd met, and especially a lot of the girls, had done some form of martial arts training.
Yeah.
And everyone I spoke to, like all the girls I spoke to about it, said it just gives them this level of confidence that they didn't have before.
Yeah.
There was, I met this, she was Vietnamese. She was like a Vietnamese Australian, so like typically small, like a typical Vietnamese person.
Sure.
And she was a blue belt, and she said that once she started training jujitsu, she felt so much more comfortable just in every moment of life, because she knew that she could at least protect herself to some level,
Yeah.
against an average person, an average assailant. She can protect herself pretty well and
Yeah.
at least buy herself some time,
Yeah.
or get away. And it's just, it does give you that level of confidence, because it gives you that clarity when you've been in those super high pressure situations where someone is trying to choke you out or break your arm.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's controlled, but they are still trying to do it until you tap.
Sure.
It does give you that sense of clarity. When you're looking around and you see some unsavory characters or something, and you're assessing the situation, is this going to turn nasty? Blah blah blah. You're walking
Yeah.
around late at night, but it gives you that ability to step back and think, okay, is this the right idea? And you analyze it a bit more. And I think it's so valuable for anybody to do just a year or two of anything.
Yeah. I'd agree. Well, it helps you to know what your limits and
Mm,
abilities are as well. Like you you you're you're in a situation that you don't want to be in, but you know what to do when you're there. I'm not going to start throwing hands when I'm better at grappling.
yeah.
I already know what my strategy is if I find myself in this situation. I don't ever want to be there.
Mm,
Like principally, I want to remove myself from that situation, but if I can't, I know what I'm going to do when I'm there because I've tested my skills and abilities in a safe environment. I know what situations I can handle because I've been in them before. I know what problems I'm likely to encounter because I've been in them before. And I know what my responses are to that situation because I've been there before.
mm,
It's training, it's practice. I hope you never have to use it, but if you do, you have a greater understanding of what you can do, what you should do, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what problems you might encounter, what problems you can put on the other person.
yeah. One thing that like one thing that blew me away when I first started, like, cause I'm still a total beginner, and then I started training, then I hurt my shoulder, and I basically haven't gone back yet. Um, but one thing that blew me away was chokes.
Uh huh.
How ridiculously effective
Yeah.
chokes are. Even someone that's way smaller than
Oh,
you
yeah, that's
can
yeah,
can choke you, and like, even if you break out of the choke, if they've choked you hard enough around your voice box, you're destroyed.
yeah,
It's like that, like it's, and
yeah,
there's
yeah,
so many different ways of doing it.
yeah,
So I always think to myself, that's my tactic if I ever need to get straight in for a choke, because probably if they're a bit of a scrapper, like a street fighter, and they're trying to
yeah,
attack you or whatever, they're probably going to be better with their hands than I am. But are they going to know about how to get out of a choke? Probably not.
yeah. And if you do it,
Hopefully not.
if you're technical with I'm doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu now.
Hmm.
That's what I've been training since I moved to Barcelona. So I've got about 2.5 years of BJJ now as
So
well.
you blue belt.
Yeah, got my blue belt earlier this year.
Oh, nice. Well done.
Thanks. But yeah, chokes are. If you got a nice technical choke, if you can get your chokes on quickly, then you don't want to punch somebody in a street fight. I mean, there's risks to that. I saw a street fight earlier this year, and then you hear the stories all the time. The guy, he gets a great punch, but the other guy falls on the floor, and
Dies.
now the other guy's dead
Yeah.
because not because of the punch, but because of hitting his head on the concrete. It's like, do you want that on your conscience? Well, do you want that on your court records? Yeah,
Yeah.
it's. But if you can choke somebody out, it's like, okay, put them to sleep. I'm leaving this situation. 5 seconds is enough to put somebody out with a good choke or a good strangle. They're different. Then you can carry on with your day. Yeah, like, kind of.
Yeah.
You can. The situation is calmer, safer than it was. This person's asleep. They're not gonna do anything. They're not dead.
Yeah.
I can walk away.
Yeah. I have a friend, and he was in the army, and he went out with a group of his friends, and one of them, he was always getting into scraps, and he ended up, yeah, like you say, punch someone. The guy falls over, whacks his head on something, dies,
Hear it all the
and
time.
then bam, straight to prison. And
Yeah,
because you're in the army, you're judged
yeah,
higher.
sure, right.
Bam, straight to prison,
Yeah,
just for being a dick and getting in a street fight, basically,
he's lost his
and
livelihoods.
lost your
He's
livelihood,
lost his career,
and
and he's
then
he's lost his freedom.
yeah,
And he's got,
and the mental toll that'll take on you for the rest of your life.
sure.
It's that freaked me out because I just thought it could happen to anyone.
It's 30 seconds of madness change your whole life like that. You don't want to be dealing with it.
Because there's also for A level I did law, and then we did a little bit about this thing. It's called the thin skull law. So what it basically states is that someone could have it. It started because the person did literally have a thin skull, so they got punched. Someone punched them, and because they had a thin skull, it fractured and killed them. And the argument
Right.
was, well, that person had a thin skull. That's not my fault. And the argument, and it's like the thin skull law basically says, you know, that person could. It doesn't matter if they've got a thin skull. If you punch them and they happen to have a thin skull and they die because of it, you're responsible. Which is obviously, you can see both sides of the argument, how you could argue against that, but it's also like you throw a punch,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
if you're, unless you're defending yourself totally, but it's like that person could have anything, and that thin skull doesn't have to necessarily mean to bones and punching, but it's like that person has some sort of deformity or defect that changes their body composition, and you do something to them, and that person ends up being harmed because of that.
yeah.
You will face the full force of the law.
I would try to avoid physical confrontations in the street.
Yeah, that's the moral of this.
Yeah.
Um, so
There's a time and a place. If you want to go and fight, there's a time and a place for that.
yeah,
There's that you can set it up in a ring, have your rules, shake your hands. Hey, and if you want something more than that, go do a bare knuckle fighting in a garage somewhere. There's people who want to do that. That
yeah,
exists,
that's pretty mental.
right? Well, like, yeah, that's not for me,
But
but
there are some crazy people who
there's
love that.
there's you can go and find it's out there.
Yeah, yeah,
I knew people who used to do that, like members of the traveling community, and
yeah,
would just go and test yourself. Just go do a bare knuckle somewhere if that's what you want to do. But in the street, where the law and the you can end up in hospital or end up in prison or worse, end up in the morgue. It's not worth it, in my opinion.
yeah. I used to watch some of those, the Irish Traveller bare knuckle fights
Right?
where they like call each other out, and it'd be like a 15-20 minute fight.
Right?
There's no spectacular movement in it, but it's still they're punching each other or trying to punch each other for like 20 solid minutes. It's like, Jesus,
All
these
right.
people are absolutely
If
crazy. No,
if
thank
that's
you.
what you want to do, not for me though.
No. Um, so we've skipped over. I mean, we've gone through the martial arts stuff, but we've skipped over Paris. So Paris came. Was it your early 20s?
Um, I, I I went there in 2004, just before that would have been my 22nd birthday. Yeah, just before my 22nd birthday. I left the university, the first year. I left Wolverhampton in um, like April, May 2004. I went home for a little bit. I was quickly reminded that I didn't want to stay there. I traveled around Europe on a bike for it was about 6 weeks. I went through a lot of different places that I'd never been before. I think it's about 14 countries in all.
Whoa. On a
And
push bike?
yeah, through a combination of a push bike and the train,
Mm.
I made my way through about 14 countries. Um, and it was partly a bit of a recon mission. Like, okay, where do I want to go?
Right.
Like, I tried uni. Everybody told me go to uni. I tried that. Didn't really work out. I know going back home is not an option because I'm finding all the same problems that I was trying to get away from in the first place.
Hmm.
So I can't go home. Where can I go? What can I do? Traveled around Europe. Went to see the Olympics in Greece in 2004.
Oh,
I just you just like needed to set yourself a project.
nice. Hmm.
Like, okay, I'm seeing it was on the TV all the time. Like, the Olympics is coming up. The Olympics. Okay, well, let's go see the Olympics then. So I got on a bike, made my way to Greece, went through like 14 countries on the way there and on the way back. And when I got back, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to go to Paris. I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know where I'm going to stay. I don't have really any money, but it's I'm going to go and do that. So I did that. And so, yeah, I got to Paris in like maybe September 2004, just before my 22nd birthday.
Oh, nice. So when you traveled down to Greece,
Yeah.
and back, were you staying in hostels or were you sleeping at rough den?
I was mostly sleeping outside. It was the summertime, so that was that was fine. That was doable. But yeah, sleeping outside in the train stations, maybe sleeping on the train sometimes. Um, mostly sleeping outside. Yeah, sleeping outside.
How was it like the first time? Was it a conscious decision? Like, right, I'm gonna sleep outside as a test of mental strength, or was it circumstances led you there, or lack of money? Like the first
All
time
of
you
it, maybe. All of
all
those.
of those.
Yeah, no, seriously, all of those. Again, like, I didn't feel like I had many options.
Hmm.
And if I wanted to do this thing, well, then this is what I have to do in order to do this thing.
Yeah.
And if sleeping outside is a consequence of doing this thing that I want to do, traveling to Greece, then sure, I'd sleep outside. Because you want to get to Greece. Your destination is going to see the Olympics. If I have to sleep outside, well, hey, I'm going to go find a nice tree to sit under.
Hmm.
And again, it's Southern Europe. So, well, you know, I'm making my way through France, Italy, you know, heading into Southern Europe in the middle of or late July.
Yeah,
It's very
yeah,
doable.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, but what was it? Did you have any shady experiences on the way down there or the way back?
To Greece?
Yeah,
No,
sleeping
actually, no,
outside.
no, no. I don't remember any. That was, oh, it's 18 years ago now.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't remember anything particularly shady. That may just be like nostalgic, kind of rose tinted glasses, but no, I don't remember anything.
Nice. And then when you got down to Greece, so do you remember the countries that you went through?
On the way there, France, I think a little bit of Switzerland, Italy, and then from Italy over to Greece.
And how long did it take you to get down there?
About 3 weeks to get down there, 2.5 weeks to get down there, a few days in different parts of Greece to see some of the Olympic events, and then
Hmm.
yeah, 2.5 weeks to get back.
Oh, nice. I'd love to do something like that. Like I met when I first arrived in Barcelona, I met this kind of hippie couple, and they'd walked from Mexico to Alaska, and I was
Right?
like, Jesus. And they said they walked with, I think they had the like basically two changes of clothes, so the ones they were wearing and one in their pack, and they just walked the way there. It took them 6 months. I was like, Jesus. And then I met these people. I met a guy when I was, I think, yeah, I was in Brazil, and he said that he'd met these people when he was traveling. That there was a couple again. They had some like fairly high-paying job or whatever, sold all their stuff, and then they went over, and then they were living on $1 a day
Uh-huh.
and cycling, and they'd been to like 100 and something countries,
Uh-huh.
and they were basically just eating like a kilo of rice a day or something like that, cycling around. I was like, oh my god, just the I just love. I always admire so much the level of determination, and when you said, like you said, setting yourself that mission, and that's what I'm doing. That's it. Like that's
Yeah,
my goal. Then whatever it takes to get there, that doesn't matter because that's my goal.
it's discipline
It's discipline.
and focus.
It's yeah. It's amazing. I discipline is something that's prevalent in my life, and I try to be disciplined. But whenever I meet people who are really disciplined, it's inspirational, and I just discipline's freedom. Can't remember where I saw that written before, but discipline is
But
freedom.
yeah, you
It's like that paradox of putting these limitations and discipline and strictness on myself actually gives you mental freedom
it's
and freedom in the rest of your life. And it's
focus, focus on a goal, focus on something, whatever it is, short term, long term, but focus on the goal. And if you start with something small, prove to yourself that you can do it,
mm,
and then tomorrow focus on another goal, maybe something a little bit bigger this time. But yeah, it's experiences like traveling to. I wanted to do that. I wanted to travel to Greece. Or so many people said I couldn't do it.
mm,
And then the morning I set out on my bike, everybody had said I couldn't do it. Like all my friends were like, "Ha ha ha, you're not gonna do that." My parents are like, "Ha ha, you're not gonna do that." And then I turned out at the bottom of my street. It's like I didn't know. Like, am I actually gonna do this? I turned out at the bottom of my street and I saw this one, this this. I guess yeah. I'm gonna say friend in this instance. I'm gonna say friend. Uh, and he said like, "Hey, how you doing? Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going to Greece."
mm.
And he's like, "Yeah, man, good for you." He was yeah, cool. I can't wait to see you when you get back. It's like he's the only person who said who kind of had any faith in me other than myself, and
Yeah.
that's exactly what I needed when as I turned out of my street. Because the
Mm,
hardest step is the first step, and
always.
I hadn't left the end of my street. It's so kind of prophetic that he passed at that exact moment because I didn't see him very regularly, but he just had the right mentality, the right attitude, the right kind of outlook and perspective on life to give you that little. Because when you turn out of the street where my parents live, you go down a hill.
Mm,
Can you see the metaphor here? He just gave me the little push. His attitude, his spirit gave me the little push I needed to get out of the end of my street, and from there it was downhill. Downhill in the sense that I'm literally
yeah,
going
yeah.
down a hill. Like I'm on a bike. I don't have to pedal. The hard work is done for me at that moment. Not downhill in the sense of it's getting worse. No, downhill in the sense that I'm getting a big push. I'm
Mm.
being given a lot of momentum in this moment because I'm not having to pedal. I'm going downhill and I'm gathering speed. I'm gathering energy behind me.
Yeah, it's that beautiful image as well of the snowball,
It's
going down the hill,
exactly
and like
that.
once it starts, that's it. There's no
That
stopping it, and
and
it just gathers force, gathers momentum, and it's like I've experienced in my life a lot of like what you mentioned there, people saying you can't do that, you can't do that. When I come out with these big dreams and these ridiculous ambitions and things that I have, and people are like, nah, you can't do that, or like, how are you gonna do that? And it's just, I think I sometimes I think if it's family members, it used to hurt me because I thought that maybe they don't believe in me, but then it's now when I hear it, I understand it's more just concern, which is
there's
fine. And then if it's other people, it's often just jealousy or not understanding. But it just fuels the fire. Now I'm
yeah,
just like, the more you
yes.
say that, the more
I'm gonna prove
I'm
you
gonna prove you
wrong.
wrong.
No, I don't. I'm not trying to prove you wrong. I'm trying to show you the potential of a human being.
Yeah.
I'm trying to show you that if I can do it, I'm no different from you. We grew up in the same town. We sat next to each other at school. We're the same, and we're more the same than we are different. If I can do it, you can do it too. I believe in you, and I'm showing you that I believe in you by believing in myself.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go do this thing by showing you what human potential is.
Yeah, it's that awesome Gandhi quote, be the change you want to see in the
It's it's
world.
it's
It's
that.
that cliche.
It's true though.
It is so true. And it's just it's taken like for me, self mastery is is my obsession. I'm obsessed with it and obsessed with being better each day, obsessed with growth and just leveling up. I think I used to love video games. I don't play them anymore, sadly, but I always loved video games, role playing games, like where you develop your skills and you level
Uh,
up and you reach top level and all that. And I just think of everything like that. I think
Life's like that. Learn a new skill.
it's
Pick up a new toy. Like, I don't know, learn a new musical instrument. Um, okay, you've done taekwondo, go learn judo. Okay, you learn judo, and you could. And I don't want anyone to think that I'm a master of this, because people dedicate their whole lives to one thing exclusively.
mm,
I'm a little more.
jack of all trades.
Yeah, maybe I have attention issues that I want to do a lot of things. I really want to drink in everything that life has to offer. So I will try different activities, but they're all, I know what my skills are, I know what my things I'm good at, I know what I'm interested in. That allows me to instantly kind of maybe put in certain things in the maybe pile. Um, yeah, I know the what skills I've already mastered and how I can maybe transfer some of those skills into other disciplines. New things that I have to learn, but where I can draw on my old skills and abilities and techniques to give me a little bit of a head start on these other things.
Mm.
Yeah, get to know yourself, show yourself what you're capable of, what your own potential is. Um, Believe in yourself, and then feed that back out to other people. Be a positive influence on yourself and on the people around you. And pick your litter
Yeah, pick your litter up.
up.
Yeah, there's something that I always I always had terrible issues with self-esteem. I hated looking at myself. I hated being overweight. I just was not comfortable in my own body and in my own skin. And then obviously when you compound that then with drinking and taking drugs and being a dick, then your self-esteem just goes to rock bottom. But then getting it at rock bottom and then trying to build it up now, I realized self-esteem has to be earned. Self-esteem has to be earned
Uh-huh.
by doing things that are healthy
Yeah,
and good for you and discipline. Exercise, I would say, for self-esteem, exercise is number one.
yeah,
Number one, it's that classic stand up straight, and it's well, if you've got a strong chest, you'll naturally stand up straight. Strong
yeah,
back and chest, then you'll
yeah,
naturally be standing up straight. And once you're naturally standing up straight, you'll look more confident. You'll feel more confident. People will treat you as if you're more confident. And then, if you can do 10 press ups and hold your own body weight or a chin up and pull yourself up, just
yeah,
that, the, the confidence that builds in yourself
yeah,
is just, I think it's unparalleled. And then you couple that with something like learning a new skill, doing something like a martial art where you're literally leveling up and going through the hierarchy, and you spend, I don't know, 1 year as a white belt and then you're onto the blue belt in
yeah,
jiu jitsu, and then you are a bit above in the hierarchy, and it's a
yeah,
healthy earned, like you've that the reward you get from that blue belt after 1 or 2 years dedication,
yeah,
it's a huge reward because you put in a huge amount of effort, and it's that effort versus reward that builds the self-esteem, and that is strongly impacted, I think, from quick rewards, which are
yeah.
drugs,
Well,
alcohol, sex, and all those type of food, whatever. And it's like there's no effort involved
yeah,
in
yeah,
those things. Sex, maybe, if you've got to put a real graft into finding a person willing to drop their knickers or trousers for you, for whatever they wear on their bottom half,
yeah.
for you. That, I suppose, that does have some effort in it, but the other things, it's like, well,
But
you're
it's,
not gonna
it's
grow.
deferred gratification is,
Yeah,
I think, the point you're trying to make.
Yeah.
and other people talk about this a lot better than we can. But instant gratification is it's fast food
Mm.
of 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 life.
Oh
Uh,
wait, I think someone's knocking. 1 second.
yeah.
Came back in. Sorry for that. I'll probably cut that out. Um, so we were on delayed gratification.
Yes.
Um, which is it's something as well that I only learned about a couple of years ago. Like the term, at least, delayed gratification,
Yeah.
and something I wish I'd learned before
Yeah.
because it is powerful, and
Very.
it's almost like unlocking a little secret, It's
Yeah.
like, wait a minute, if I put 5 minutes a day effort into something
Uh-huh.
and compound that
Yes.
effort over a month or 2 months, then I
Yeah.
get this huge reward
Yeah.
at the end of it. And the way that for me that's manifested so clearly is with the poetry.
Yeah.
I only write 5 or 10 minutes per day
Yeah.
because I can't bring myself to do more than that.
Yeah.
But 5 or 10 minutes compounded is a poem a month,
Yeah.
pretty much. And then I perform that poem, and then I get that reward of people enjoying it or being invited to go perform somewhere
Yeah.
because of that reward.
Yeah.
And it's like that direct feedback.
Yeah.
And then you get, I wouldn't say I'm hooked on that, but then that gives you another path for finding real, because it's not even like it's necessarily pleasure, it's more satisfaction. And satisfaction, I think, trumps pleasure
Yeah.
by a long way, in my case, feeling that innate sense of satisfaction from hard work.
And it's healthy, it's constructive, it's permanent.
Mm,
That is to say that you can. We haven't talked much about my creativity. I'm conscious of the time, and maybe we could do another episode in the future where we
hmm.
talk about the actual process of making
Yeah.
paintings. Um, but it gives you something permanent, something that, yes, you said it, you can share it with other people. Something that, yes, invites other opportunities for events or other spaces. But yeah, it's permanent. It outlives your poetry will outlive you.
Yeah.
Your poetry will last forever as a contribution that you've made to culture, society, civilization, your community, whatever. Um, it it's a part of yourself that exists in the moment that continues to exist forever.
Yeah. And I've always been, I loved reading biographies, autobiographies when I was a kid. My mum used to give me them. She used to give me a lot of what do you call them, testimonies
Yeah.
of, because she was like a born again Christian. She used to give me these testimonies of how people had changed from these rough lives and then turned to God,
Uh-huh.
and whether or not turning to God is a good or a bad thing, I'm not going to get into that now. But I've always loved that the change. I've loved the progression, and I've loved reading about people that have had amazing lives. And I remember when I was younger, just thinking, I want to live an amazing life
Uh-huh.
so that I can write an awesome biography.
Right.
And like, it's like that would be the ultimate reward, living your life in such a way, then when you're 60, writing a book that then outlives you
Yeah.
and helps people, amuses people, entertains
Yeah.
people. And it's like that's like the ultimate long reward, I think. And so far I don't think I've lived any sort of spectacular life, but I'm still 28.
Yeah.
So I've got another 60 years, 70. Hopefully I want to live till 100.
Tell a cool story, inspire people, be a positive influence, leave a positive mark on the planet.
Yeah, it's that kind of posthumous fame that it's like that's
No, it's just
appealing.
it's just knowing that you're doing a good thing.
Yeah.
It's just knowing there's a lot of bad energy in the world, and we have to be conscious of that and choose to work, not fight
Mm.
against it, but choose to work against it. Choose to constructively solve the problems that we face, and part of part of that is being healthy, physically and mentally healthy, and making the world a more interesting, beautiful place. I believe in sports and arts have really saved me. I believe in redemption. You
Yeah.
mentioned about like born again Christians with the theme of redemption.
Yeah.
Totally believe in redemption, and yeah, it's sports and arts that offered me a large sense of redemption.
Gives you a new um
It's
new avenue
purpose,
of life
yeah,
and a new
purpose,
purpose.
direction, yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I think what we'll do, I think, shall we wrap it up here for today, and then we can do a future one about the Paris and the art, because they're almost like two totally different
Kind of, yeah,
topics.
yeah,
So, and we've done like the martial arts, the exercise stuff today,
yeah,
um, and I'm just concerned that there's probably going to be quite a lot of noise out there now.
yeah.
Um,
There is some overlap between uh, being between my sports and my arts. There is some overlap, but they're also sufficiently different, and I think we got enough energy in another podcast. I'll do that with you.
Yeah, certainly, because I think that that'll leave it on a nice little cliffhanger for
Ooh,
for
yeah,
people to learn
yeah, right.
about the experiences of 4 years living rough in Paris.
Ooh.
So that'll be an exciting story for upcoming, and who knows what number podcast that will be, because then that could be you could have two temporarily best podcasts,
Ooh.
which would be amazing. Um, so w- at the end of this podcast, it's the quest for wisdom. I ask my guests for words of wisdom. I usually ask for words of wisdom to yourself growing up and words of wisdom to the listeners now.
Okay. Find a purpose. Find a healthy purpose and commit to it. Learn what your skills, abilities, passions, interests are. Yeah, find out what you're good at, find out what you like, and find a healthy place to channel those into. It's okay to have setbacks. It's okay to diverge from your route a little bit. That's all part of the learning process. But ultimately believe in the direction that you're going in and believe that it'll all work out for the best and make a positive contribution to who you are with the skills that you have and share that with the people around you. Make the world a better place.
And is that for yourself, or is that have you combined the two of
I've
those?
tried to combine the two of
Okay,
those, yeah.
some wise words there from Dan. So Dan, this has been amazing. I've
Thanks.
thoroughly enjoyed this.
Me too.
Yeah, I hope you have. And there's an exciting little treat for you now because one moment.
Ooh, what's he got? What's in the bag? I wasn't expecting this.
What you get is the first
Ooh,
Quest for Wisdom
alright,
T-shirt.
cool. Alright, nice. Yeah.
I have medium. I think maybe a medium's going to be too small. I couldn't remember what your size you were.
No, I
I've
like.
only got medium. I thought you're more of a tight
Yeah,
T-shirt guy.
yeah. How did you know?
I just thought you were, because he's quite a beefy guy, but he's also quite, well, you're not particularly tall, are you? Um, but
No,
you're not particularly tall, but you are very beefy. So, yeah, I have mediums.
I'm average height apparently.
Are you?
Apparently,
How tall is that?
5'8", I think.
Oh, okay.
But yeah,
Yeah.
maybe I should move to the Netherlands.
No, then
I
no.
think then I'll definitely be short.
Yeah. But anyway,
Lovely T-shirt, thank you.
yeah, you're
It's
welcome.
I'm
If
gonna. I
it's
can't
too
wait
small,
to
let me
try it
know
on.
because I've got mediums or extra larges.
I think it's gonna be perfect.
But yeah, thank you very much. I've loved this, and we'll see you again for another one.
Look
Our
forward to it.
first return guest, probably. Right. Farewell, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Quest for Wisdom podcast with your host, Connor Monaghan. If you enjoyed the episode and would like to support the show, then please like it, subscribe, and leave a review on whichever platform you are using. This small act is a massive help and is hugely appreciated. You can find more information about all of our guests on thequestforwisdom.com and follow us at The Quest for Wisdom on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter for exciting updates. We also have a Patreon account for anyone who would like to contribute towards the running of the show. Finally, I would like to thank the Comedy Clubhouse in Barcelona for allowing us to record here, and for their ongoing support. If you are ever in Barcelona, make sure to check it out for daily shows of comedy and performance art in English. Farewell for now.